My name is Emily Carter, and I live in Austin, Texas. If you had told me a year ago that one careless comment could unravel the life I had built with the man I loved, I wouldn't have believed you. But here I am, sitting in an empty house, wondering how I managed to break something so precious with just a few words. This is the story of how I told my husband, Daniel, that he wasn't my first choice, and how those words changed everything. Daniel and I met 6 years ago. I was 27 then, working as a nurse at St. David's Hospital. Life was hectic, filled with overnight shifts and long days. Daniel was different from anyone I'd ever met. He was calm, steady, and had this warmth that made people feel safe just being around him. He wasn't flashy or overly charming, not the kind of man who swept you off your feet in the first 5 minutes. Instead, he was dependable, kind, and patient. We got married 3 years later, in a small ceremony by Lake Travis. It wasn't extravagant, but it was beautiful. My parents were there, his family came down from Oklahoma, and our closest friends surrounded us. That day, I remember thinking I was making the right choice. Daniel wasn't the man I thought I'd marry back in college, but he was the man I needed. Still, somewhere in the back of my mind, I carried pieces of my past. In college, I had dated a guy named Jason. He was everything Daniel wasn't: bold, exciting, and unpredictable. He was the kind of man who could make a room light up just by walking into it. But he also had flaws: selfishness, a short temper, and a tendency to put himself first. Our relationship ended in heartbreak. Even though I moved on, a part of me still remembered him. Daniel never asked much about my past. He respected me enough to let me share only what I was comfortable with. But one evening, after a long week, I made a mistake that I'll regret for the rest of my life. We were sitting in our living room, the TV muted in the background, a bottle of wine half finished on the table. Daniel had been talking about how lucky he felt to have me in his life. He smiled at me in that gentle way of his, and something inside me twisted. Maybe it was the wine, maybe it was my own insecurities, but I said words I can never take back. "Daniel, you know you weren't my first choice, right?" The moment I said it, I saw his expression change. His smile faltered, his eyes dimmed. He didn't yell, didn't get angry. That almost made it worse. He just sat there quietly, staring at me as if he didn't know who I was anymore. "What do you mean by that?" he finally asked. I tried to backtrack, fumbling over my words. I didn't mean it in a bad way. I thought I'd end up with someone else before. You know, life doesn't always go as planned, but I'm glad it led me to you. But my attempt to soften the blow only made it worse. Daniel didn't respond right away. He just nodded slowly, got up from the couch, and went to bed without saying another word. The next morning, I woke up to find his side of the bed empty. His car was gone, and on the kitchen counter sat a note. "I need some time to think. Don't call me. Daniel." At first, I told myself he just needed space and that he'd come back in a day or two. But days turned into weeks. He didn't answer my texts. He didn't pick up my calls. His family said he was staying with his brother in Oklahoma for a while, but he wouldn't talk to me. The silence was unbearable. Every corner of the house reminded me of him. The coffee mug he always used, the jacket he left hanging by the door, the smell of his cologne still lingering on the couch. I kept replaying that moment in my head, wondering why I couldn't have just kept my mouth shut. I realized too late what my words had done. To Daniel, it wasn't just a careless comment. It was a confession that he had always been second best in my eyes. That no matter how much he gave me, no matter how much love he poured into our marriage, I still carried someone else in my heart. That's not what I meant, but that's what he heard. After 3 weeks of silence, I drove to Oklahoma to see him. I didn't tell him I was coming. I just showed up at his brother's house. His brother let me in reluctantly, and there he was, sitting at the kitchen table, looking tired and worn out. When he saw me, his jaw tightened. "Emily, I told you not to come." "Please, Daniel," I begged, tears already in my eyes. "I didn't mean it the way it sounded. You are the one I want. You're the one I chose. Jason was my past, but you're my forever. Please don't let one stupid comment erase everything we've built." For a long time, he just stared at me. His silence was crushing. Finally, he spoke. Do you know what it feels like to hear that from the person you've given everything to? That you weren't their first choice? I've loved you with everything in me, Emily. I never made you feel like second best. And now I don't know if I can forget what you said. Those words cut deeper than anything else. I wanted to fall to my knees and beg him to forgive me, but I knew forgiveness couldn't be forced. I left Oklahoma that night, feeling emptier than ever. Weeks turned into months. Daniel still hasn't come home. Some days I get a text from him. Short, polite, distant. Other days, there's nothing at all. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe he'll come back one day. Maybe he won't. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: words matter. Once spoken, they can't be taken back. You can apologize 1,000 times, but some wounds don't heal easily. If I could go back in time, I would hold Daniel's face in my hands and tell him he has always been my choice, my heart, my safe place. But I can't undo what I said. I can only live with the regret of letting one careless sentence shatter the life we had. And so I wait. Every day, I hold on to the hope that he'll walk through that door again. That he'll give me one more chance to show him that he's not just my choice, he's my everything. Until then, I sit in this house that feels far too big without him, wondering if love is strong enough to heal words that should never have been spoken.